So in this tutorial, we're going to check out another WPF control, and that would be the Viewbox. All right, so we are in almost a blank application. I just have a grid, and that's it for now. So I'm going to start with lay out some groundwork, and then we'll start talking about it. All right. To kick things off, I'm going to add some columns, say 4 of them to be exact. And copy and paste this guy 3 more times. All right, so we got 4 columns here in our design surface. All right, so next I want to add a border and get a background of the long grain and the border brush of red and the thickness of border thickness of 1, and close and expand this. And inside this border, I'd like to place a text block and give it a text of hello. And let's get a font size as well. Let's go with 33. Okay, so I have the text block right here inside my border. All right. Next thing I want to do, I want to enclose this and place the text block basically inside a view box, since that's our topic. I'm going to add a tag and change the grid to view box. Okay. Now you can see the changes happen right away. That gives you an idea what Viewbox does. All right, so that's the first one. I'm going to add a few more. I'll copy the border, and right below here, I'm going to paste it. Likewise, 2 more times. So we have 4 borders sitting on top of each other. So let's change the column index to this is going to be grid.column1, and this is going to be grid.column2, and finally grid.column3. So basically we have 4 identical columns. So Viewbox. So we have each text blocks enclosed inside a Viewbox. Right. So Viewbox, what it does, it can stretch or scale up, scale down the content inside it. Okay. So basically, it's a content decorator that can scale and stretch the content. Okay, so we're going to talk about some properties. Before we start talking about properties, let's give it a background color to our text blocks as well. So let's go with magenta for this guy, and let's copy and paste to the rest. These colors will help us to understand the behavior better than talking about it. Yeah. Like they say, 1 picture is worth of 1,000 words. So there you go. All right, so we have our design in place. Let me zoom in a little bit on this first column. Well, actually, that's too much. Let's go with something about that's fine. 66 is fine. All right. So this first column. So let's talk about the properties now. The first property I want to talk about is the stretch. So stretch has 4 values. Let's start with none. So with none, what happens is the Viewbox will adapt the size of the text block. Okay, so it's going to adapt to its child as far as sizes go. Okay, and let's go to the next one, and let's change the stretch to fill. Okay, so what fill does, it's going to use the all available space and stretch the, whether it's a text block or image, it'll fill the whole space as much as possible. It doesn't care about the aspect ratio at all. Okay, it'll squeeze it or stretch it, whatever it can do, it'll fit in the available space. And the next property is going to be uniform. So stretch value will be uniform. Okay, so with uniform, it feels like nothing changed. That's because the uniform is the default value. So when you create a Viewbox out of box, the default value is uniform. Okay, that's why nothing changed. And what the uniform does, it will try to fill up the available space, but as long as the aspect ratio doesn't change. So it's going to respect the aspect ratio and then try to fill it. That's why it covers this area only without breaking the aspect ratio. Okay, if I maybe, let's say, if I give it a column span of 2. Well, again, this column is in the way, but it still will respect it will increase the font size, but it will respect the aspect ratio. Let's back that up. Okay. All right, the next one, the next value of stretch I want to talk about, it's going to be a combination of both. So stretch, by both I mean the uniform and the fill. So stretch set to uniform to fill. Right, so this guy, what this is going to do, is going to fill up the whole space and keep the aspect ratio. And if the text or image doesn't fit, it will just be trimmed off. It won't show in the, it won't try to squeeze it in or stretch. It'll keep the aspect ratio and it'll keep the, I'll try to fill up the whole space. Okay, so that's that. Now let's talk about another property, and that's called StrectDirection. The StrectDirection won't have any effect for the when the stretch is set to none, so we're not going to even bother with that. So let's go check out that property on the uniform. All right, so I'm going to set the StrectDirection to, let's first try down only. Okay, and let's run this again, see what happens. So out of box, right off the bat, it decreased the size of the view box to the original size of the text block. Okay, so let's try to resize this. So what's happening here is the down only can go below the original size, but it can never go up from the original size. So you can go as low as possible from the original size, but the top value would be the original size of the text or image. So that's down only. Up only is the opposite of down only. So it's going to Let's change this to up only. So with this one, it will take the this size here. I think, well, let's run this, see what happens. So if I resize this, I think you can go as low as the original size. Yes. And after that, it won't go any lower, but you can go up as much as possible. Okay. So the limit is the original size of the, in both cases, the original size of the text or the image is the limit. In one case, you can go lower, but in the second case, you can go only above and beyond. All right, so that's up and down long. And the other one, the last value is both. And again, this is the default one. So when you create a view box, the two default values, uniform and both, which means you can go both direction. With both, you can go lower than the actual size or above the actual size. Okay. So if we run this, now we can go both direction. And we resize the window. We can go lower and we can go upper. Okay. All right, let's try the same example with an image. Let's comment these text blocks. And let's replace it with an image. So I'm gonna get a source of which I probably use one. I'm gonna use a tomato image since I already have that in my solution. So it's in veggies / tomatoes .png, and let's close that out. Let's see if we have the image. All right, we have that. Let's copy and paste this. I'm going to remove this because again, this is the default. So, well, yes, let's just not cause too much confusion while we try to understand it. All right. So, okay, let's run this. Once again, we have this is the original size of the the stretch property set to none. That's the default actual size of the image. Here we have fill. It stretches the image up and down to fit in inside the column. Here we have the uniform. It keeps the aspect ratio and tries to fit in as much as possible. And this guy here is the uniform to fill. It will take the whole space, try to fit in. If it doesn't fit, it will trim the rest of the image. So if we resize this, actually let's go full screen. So now you can see a little more of the image because now you have more space. But this one doesn't change. This one will change. This one will change. But this one will never change, the first one. Let's try to minimize the window, see what happens. Again, this one, since the default is both ways, it can decrease and we'll still keep the aspect ratio as much as possible. Well, yes, and This one squeezed the whole damn tomato. I almost crushed it. And this one doesn't change it, but if there's no space available, it just won't show it. Okay. All right, so those are the basically two main important properties of the Viewbox. Let's see. Let's go ahead and create a Viewbox from using the code behind as well, just to see. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just comment this whole thing out. Let's give a name to our grid. Let's call this just GRD for grid, and let's use the loaded event to add the view box dynamically with code behind. Okay, so I'm going to add a new event handler, and I'm going to use the peak definition feature. Bring that area. It's quite handy when you have a short code instead of going back to code behind. Same thing, but our event is right here. But I'm going to use this for short code snippets. It's quite handy. Make changes to your code, so you don't have to search the whole thing to locate it. If you have a big file, you don't have to locate. It just goes right there, just like the go-to definition. All right, so let's go ahead and create an instance of our Viewbox. Let's say var vb equals new Viewbox. Once we create the instance, let's set the stretch property, b.stretch. Let's go with stretch.uniform. And now let's create a child element, which is going to be a text block. Var txt equals new text block. Let's get a text. txt.text equals hello. And next, we're going to set the child property of the Viewbox to our new text block. And lastly, we're going to tell the grid children.add and pass in the Viewbox. And that should take care of it. Error cleared. Let's rebuild this. And run it. Now we have the hello with the uniform stretch across our window or grid. Okay, let's if we change this to none, let's run this again. Now we have tiny hello right here because the default font size. I think that's it. Until the next one, so long.